Monday evening, I attended the Berlin summit together with President Zelensky, several European colleagues, and American negotiators Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in a constructive and united atmosphere, which I think is worth highlighting. It resulted in a final declaration by the European leaders that includes all the priorities Italy has supported during these difficult months and which I reiterated last Tuesday, welcoming President Zelensky in Rome. From our point of view, the path to peace cannot disregard four fundamental factors. The close bond between Europe and the United States, who are not competitors in this matter, as they share the same goal but surely have perspectives that are not completely overlapping, primarily due to their different geographical positions. The strengthening of Ukraine's negotiating position is mainly achieved by making it clear that we do not intend to abandon Ukraine to its fate at the most delicate stage of recent years, to the protection of Europe's interests, because the support guaranteed from the start of the conflict, and the risks it would face if Russia came out stronger, cannot be ignored, and the sustained pressure on Russia, our ability to build deterrence, to make war not advantageous for Moscow. How is this actually happening? Because beyond the smokescreen of Russian propaganda, the reality on the ground is that Moscow has become bogged down in a rugged positional war, so much so that from the end of 2022 to today it has managed to conquer just 1.45% of Ukrainian territory, moreover at the cost of enormous sacrifices in terms of men and materials. And this difficulty is the only thing that can force Moscow into an agreement, and it is a difficulty that, I want to remind you, has been ensured by the courage of the Ukrainians. It is clearly an extremely complex negotiation that, to reach completion, cannot, however, ignore Russia's willingness to contribute to the negotiation process in a fair, credible, and constructive manner. Unfortunately, to date, everything seems to suggest that this willingness has not yet developed, as evidenced by the continuous bombings on Ukrainian cities and infrastructure, as well as on the defenseless population. This is further confirmed by the unreasonable demands that Moscow is conveying to its interlocutors, the main one of which concerns the portion of the Donbass not conquered by the Russians. Contrary to what is narrated by the propaganda, the main obstacle to a peace agreement is Russia's inability to conquer the four Ukrainian regions it has unilaterally declared. Annexed as early as the end of 2022, even inserting them into the Russian constitution as an integral part of its territory. This gamble has led to the paradox that territories formally inserted into the constitution of the Russian Federation are today under Ukrainian control. Hence the Russian demand that Ukraine withdraw at least from the entire Donbass. And clearly, this is currently the most difficult hurdle to overcome in the negotiation, and I believe we should all acknowledge the good faith of the President. I take this opportunity to reiterate that Italy does not intend to send soldiers to Ukraine, and guarantees from international allies, starting with the United States, on the model of Article 5 of the Atlantic Treaty, an option you all remember having been proposed by Italy itself as a demonstration of our nation's active contribution to the goal of a just and lasting peace. The issue of security guarantees is certainly the one on which the greatest progress has been made. During the Berlin summit, together with numerous partners and starting with those in the G7 and Europe, Italy remains committed to maintaining economic pressure on Russia with the aim of limiting the resources that fuel its war machine. We believe that any tool of support to Kiev or pressure on Moscow must always respect our values, principles, and the rules on which the rule of law is based. This certainly applies to Ukraine's European prospects. We are closely monitoring and encouraging every effort to ensure the respect of the commitments that Kiev has undertaken in terms of reforms and the fight against corruption. But on the subject of corruption, I want to say that we find the antibodies shown in these weeks to be very encouraging by the Ukrainian institutions. This reasoning also applies to the debate on the ways in which the European Union will be called upon to find resources to financially help Kiev, with the aim of avoiding a collapse that would represent serious damage. As you know, Italy has decided in the discussion not to withhold its support for the regulation that has established the freezing of Russian assets. However, I want to emphasize clearly, without yet endorsing any decision on their use. We have done this even though not agreeing with the method used, to ensure once again that there are no doubts about the consistent line of support that the government has always maintained towards Ukraine. In approving the regulation, we have, in fact, wanted to reaffirm a principle that we consider fundamental. Decisions of such legal, financial, and institutional magnitude, as well as that of the possible use of frozen assets, can only be made at the leadership level. To be made at the leadership level. This will be the task assigned to the European Council tomorrow, which is called to ensure the continuity of financial support for the next 2 years, identifying the most sustainable solution for the member states in the short and long term. Italy considers it obviously sacrosanct that Russia should be the primary party responsible for paying for the reconstruction. I want to reiterate this at a time when the government is seriously and determinedly committed to bringing Italy out of the excessive deficit procedure, inherited thanks to the cheerful budget policies of the governments that preceded us. Just as we believe that if one decides to go in this direction, it is short-sighted to focus on a single entity holding frozen Russian sovereign assets, namely Belgium, when other partner nations also have immobilized assets in their respective financial systems. Our willingness to help the Ukrainian people has never been and will never be in question, and I wish to remind this Assembly that it was precisely under the Italian presidency of the G7 that the first historic yet legally and financially sound compromise was reached to leverage the fruits of the frozen Russian funds. But today as yesterday, we have the duty to seek the most effective solution to preserve the balance between providing concrete assistance to Ukraine on one hand and respecting the principles of legality, sustainability, and financial stability and monetary value on the other. We are open to all solutions and intend to prioritize the one that can best ensure this balance, but these are complex decisions that cannot be rushed.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.